Welcome to Gaming History with Ripley, and I'm your host Ripley, and in this series, we talk about the history of video games, and in this episode, we'll be talking about the background of famous video game manufacturer, Nintendo. We'll be talking about Nintendo's history from the 1800s all the way to the very early 80s. And yes, they are over 130 years old. We will not be talking about consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment Systems or the Nintendo 64, because those are more deserving of their own episodes. In 1889, Fusajiro Yamauchi opened up Nintendo Kopai. So he opened up the business because he had an artistic talent for making Hanafuda cards. Hanafuda cards are beautifully drawn cards used for legal gambling, and they're still being used to this very day in Japan. In the 1900s, Nintendo started to produce a deck of suit cards, which were popular in the West. They also were popular enough to get a deal from Disney to put their characters on their Hanafuda and suit cards. In 1927, Hiroshi Yamauchi became the new CEO of Nintendo of Japan, and he was there for 1927 all the way to 2002. So he was working at Nintendo for a long time. Since Nintendo's cards was selling really well, they decided to touch in some other businesses. They tried a rice that could be made on your stovetop. And they also tried Love Hotels, which is basically a hotel that I could go to for baby making for 2 or 3 hours. But those didn't do very well. One day, Gunpei Yokoi, famous Nintendo employee, came to Nintendo with a new toy he invented. And then basically how this toy worked was that there were 2 rods in the back, both faced in different ways like this. And then there was a long stick with 2 metal slabs going like this. And then at the end there was a claw. And then basically if you did this to the 2 rods, then it would cause it to extend and the claw to close. Hiroshi found out about his invention when he saw Gunpei playing with it instead of doing his work. Instead of scolding at him for slacking off, he decided that it would be good for his company since though his company was at the verge of bankruptcy. So in 1970, they first released this toy dubbed the Ultrahand. When Nintendo later made a lot of other different toys, one of them being the Ultra Ball. Well, how this toy worked is that basically you would put a baseball into the flinger, and then you would put it all the way back. And then the flinger would fling it for you. And it was basically very good for batting practice. Well, later in the mid-70s, video games arrived in Japan in the form of Pong consoles. The first Pong console was released by Atari in the earlier 70s. But other companies copied them, and what you know, it also landed in Japan. Hiroshi, fond of this idea, decided that the company had to make their own Pong consoles. So in December of 1977, Nintendo released their very first console, the Nintendo TV Color Game 6, and this was before Nintendo was good at naming video game consoles.
素晴らしいボールの変化、鮮やかな9色のカラーがゲームの種類によって変わります。ラケットの大きさやボールのスピードが変えられるので、ハイテクニックなゲームが楽しめます。見るテレビから遊べるテレビへ。15種類ものゲームが楽しめるカラーテレビゲーム15、9800円のカラーテレビゲーム6もあります。
Basically, this console had four different versions of Pong and Color, which was a luxury for games back then. Well, a week later in 1978, in January, they released the Nintendo TV Color Game 15 as a redesigned version with now 6 versions of Pong and detachable controllers. Nintendo hired Shigeru Miyamoto, a legendary game designer, to work on the third TV Color Game games console. And in 1978, same year when Nintendo released the Nintendo TV Color Game Racing 112, and it was a success. What it was a racing game that raced laps from a top-down perspective. In 1979, also Shigeru Miyamoto developed Project Nintendo, released the Nintendo TV Color Game Block, which was just a rip-off of Breakout. But it became their most successful console from the 1970s. It's in 1980, and also Shigeru Miyamoto developed Project, the Nintendo TV computer game, as it was called, which is computerized as the board game Othello. In the late 70s, Japan broke into the arcade market, and their first product to show up in America, and yes, it was also produced by Nintendo, opening Nintendo of America. Donkey Kong, a very famous arcade game with the first appearance of the very famous character Mario. But there was also the Game & Watch, which also appeared in America too, which was a handheld that could play games on the go, which was developed by Gunpei Yokoi, the same person who developed the Ultrahand. Well, I would get into more of the Nintendo gaming products. I could probably talk about this all day, but those are more deserving of their own video, and I just wanted to talk about their more obscure history. Nintendo is still around to this day, and guess what? They're still making toys and playing cards with their division, World of Nintendo. But they only make toys and playing cards based off of their characters and their video games, like Link from the Legend of Zelda and Mario from the Super Mario franchise. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, or subscribe for notifications. But until then, game on!